Failed mothers do not deserve a seat at the table with us. My son's words cut through the dining room like a slap across the face, and 30 people went completely still. 30 pairs of eyes were glued to me as Julian contemptuously pushed away the tray of homemade lasagna that I had spent 2 entire days preparing. My daughter-in-law, Veronica, laughed. She laughed right in my face with that shrill, satisfied cackle that froze my blood. And just when I thought the humiliation could not get any worse, my grandson Leo stood up from his chair and said something that left the entire dinner in a silence so absolute I could hear the beating of my own heart. But before I tell you what my grandson said, before I reveal how that Christmas night changed everything forever, I need you to understand something. I need to take you back to the exact moment my life split in two. Because what happened the next day, when Julian called me bragging about his money, when the truth finally hit him full force, when his entire perfect world crumbled before his eyes, that needs context. And I swear to you that every second of this story is going to leave you breathless. Let me go back to that moment, to the exact instant I heard those words come out of my own son's mouth. I was standing next to the main table, wearing the beige dress I had ironed with such care that morning, holding that damn casserole dish with trembling hands. I had arrived 3 hours early at my cousin Betty's house to help with the prep, even though no one had asked me to. I had peeled potatoes, I had chopped vegetables, I had smiled while Veronica threw poisoned comments my way about my cooking, about my clothes, about everything. I just wanted this Christmas to be special. I just wanted to share it with my son and grandson after months of being ignored, of being treated as if I were invisible. The dining room was decorated with golden lights that shimmered against the cream-colored walls. I could smell the aroma of roasting turkey mixed with cinnamon and hot apple cider. There had been laughter just minutes ago. The cousins were chatting animatedly. The kids were running between the tables. Everything seemed perfect. I had waited for the right moment to present my lasagna, that same lasagna that Julian had adored throughout his childhood, the one he asked for every birthday, every special occasion. I had prepared it exactly as he remembered. Layers of tender pasta, a rich meat sauce simmered for hours with just the right touch of herbs, plenty of mozzarella and ricotta, baked with all the love a mother can put into a dish. But when I placed the tray in front of him, when I smiled at him hoping for even a small show of appreciation, Julian did not even look at it. He pushed the tray away with the back of his hand, as if it were something disgusting. "I am not going to eat this," he said with a cold voice. And then he turned toward Veronica, with a smile that did not reach his eyes. She looked at him with complicity, with that expression of superiority she had perfected in the 8 years she had been married to my son. And then he said it. He said it out loud, for everyone to hear, so it would be etched into the memory of every person present. The air became dense, heavy. I felt the heat rising up my neck, my cheeks burning with shame. Tears began to form in my eyes, though I fought desperately to hold them back. I could not cry. Not there. Not in front of everyone. My Aunt Betty let out a stifled gasp. My cousin Patrick froze with his fork, suspended halfway to his mouth. The little kids who had been playing in the corner went silent all at once. Claire, my cousin, looked at me with a mixture of horror and pity that hurt almost as much as Julian's words. Veronica leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails shining under the light as she covered her mouth to contain that cruel laugh. But her eyes pierced me with a dark pleasure that said everything I needed to know. She had waited for this moment. She had planned it. She had orchestrated it. And Julian, my son, the boy who had grown up in my arms, the baby who had cried on my chest when his father died, had become her perfect puppet. He did not even look me in the eye. He kept his gaze fixed on his empty plate, with that tense jaw I knew so well, with that stone expression he had learned to use to hide any trace of emotion. 30 people were waiting for my reaction. They expected me to scream, to defend myself, to make a scene, or perhaps they expected me to simply crumble, to run out of there with my tail between my legs, humiliated and destroyed. I could feel the weight of all those stares on me like stones crushing me. The grandfather clock on the wall, a clock that had belonged to my late husband, marked every second with a tick-tock that resonated in the deadly silence. My heart was beating so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. And then Leo moved. My 12-year-old grandson, sitting next to his father, pushed his chair back. The sound scraped against the hardwood floor like a scream. He stood up slowly, and when I saw his hazel eyes full of tears, when I saw how his small hands were trembling as they turned into tight fists at his sides, I knew something important was about to happen, something none of us expected, something that would change the course of that night forever. But what Leo said in that moment, the words that came out of that brave boy's mouth, I will tell you that in a second. Because first, you need to understand how we got here. You need to know the full truth. You need to understand that I was not always this 63-year-old woman standing in the middle of a dining room, being humiliated by her own son. There was a time when Julian looked at me as if I were his hero. There was a time when he told me I was the strongest woman in the world. But that was a long time ago. Before Veronica, before the money and the appearances changed everything. Julian was only 5 years old when my husband died in a car accident. A rainy night, a drunk driver, and my entire world collapsed in a matter of seconds. I was left alone with a small child, without savings, without close family who could truly help me, and with a mountain of debt my husband had left behind without me knowing. I was 28 years old, and I felt like my life was over, but I had Julian. And that boy with the big eyes and shy smile became my reason to get up every morning. I got a job as a housekeeper at a private school. They paid me little, but they allowed me to bring Julian with me after classes. He did his homework in a corner of the hallway while I mopped floors and scrubbed toilets. On weekends, I worked at a laundromat. My hands cracked from the water and the chemicals. My back ached from the long shifts, but every penny I earned went directly to my son's education. I wanted him to have what I never had. I wanted him to study, to become someone important, to never have to clean other people's floors to survive. And Julian was brilliant. He got the best grades in his class. The teachers called me to tell me how proud I should be. I remember perfectly the day he came home with his honor roll certificate in the 6th grade. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe and said, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to give you everything. You're going to have the best house, the best dresses, everything. I promise." I cried that night. I cried tears of happiness because I felt that all the sacrifices were worth it. When Julian entered high school, I got a third job. I sold cosmetics from a catalog door to door in the evenings. I slept 4 hours a day, sometimes less. My friends told me I was killing myself, that I needed to rest, but I could not stop. My son needed new uniforms, books, materials for his projects. I needed to pay the tuition for that prestigious prep school that would open doors for him, and I would give it to him even if I had to crumble in the attempt. Then came college. Julian was accepted into one of the top private universities in the country to study business administration. The tuition was $50,000 a year. I did not have $50,000. I did not even have $1,000 saved, but I was not going to let my son lose that opportunity. I went to the bank and took out a loan. I put my small house up as collateral. It was crazy. I knew, but it was my son, my only son, the boy for whom I had worked until I bled for 18 years. During his 4 years of college, I worked like never before. I added a 4th job cleaning corporate offices in the early hours of the morning. I left my house at 4 in the morning and returned at 11 at night. I ate once a day to save money. I stopped buying myself new clothes. I stopped going to the doctor even when my body hurt. Every cent, every single cent, went to Julian's university. In total, I spent over $65,000 on his education expenses that weren't covered by scholarships. $65,000 I did not have, that I borrowed, that I earned with blood and tears. Julian graduated with honors. I remember that day as if it were yesterday. I saw him go up to the stage in his cap and gown, receive his diploma, smile for the photos. I was sitting all the way in the back of the auditorium, in my old gray dress and worn-out shoes, but my heart was about to explode with pride. My son had made it. He had escaped poverty. He was going to have a better life than mine. Everything had been worth it. He got a job immediately at a major corporation. He started earning well, much better than I had earned in my entire life. He moved into a nice apartment in an expensive part of the city. I was still living in my humble little house, still working to pay off the loan I had taken out for him, but I was happy. Julian came to visit me every week. He brought me flowers, he took me out to eat. He told me that soon he would buy me a new house, that he would get me out of there, that he would pay me back for everything I had invested in him. Then he met Veronica. It was at a business conference 8 years ago. She worked in the marketing department of another company. She was pretty, well-dressed, from a wealthy family. From the first moment I met her, I knew she did not like me. The way she looked me up and down when Julian introduced me, the way she wrinkled her nose when she saw my house, the way she smiled with that fake smile while giving me a superficial hug. But Julian was in love, blind with love, and I was not going to be the controlling mother who ruined her son's happiness. They got married 6 months later. An expensive and elegant wedding that I helped pay for, even though Julian told me it was not necessary. I contributed $5,000 that I had saved by selling some of my old furniture. I wanted my son to have the wedding of his dreams. At the ceremony, Veronica sat me at a table far away, next to guests I did not know. I found out later that she had told Julian that I would look out of place at the main table with her elegant family, and so began my slow descent into hell. It was not something sudden. Veronica was too smart for that. It was gradual, calculated, like poison dripping slowly into a glass of water. At first, they were small comments, almost imperceptible. "Oh, Eleanor, that sweater is really worn out, don't you think?" Or, "Julian told me you work cleaning houses. How admirable that you aren't ashamed of that kind of work." She always said it with a smile, always in front of other people, always with that sweet tone that made it impossible to confront her without looking like the crazy sensitive one. Julian started to change. He stopped visiting me every week, then every 2 weeks, then once a month. He always had excuses. He was busy with work. Veronica was not feeling well. They had social commitments. When I called him, his answers were shorter and shorter, colder. "Yes, Mom. No, Mom. We'll talk later, Mom." As if I were an annoying obligation instead of the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. When Leo was born, I thought things would improve. I thought being a grandmother would give me my son back in some way. But Veronica had other plans. The first 6 months after the birth, she barely let me see the baby. There was always a reason. The baby was sleeping. The baby was sick. They were busy. When she finally allowed me to visit, I had to give a week's notice. I could not arrive unannounced. I could not stay for more than an hour. I could not hold the baby if she was not present supervising me. I remember one time I arrived with a gift for Leo. I had knitted a soft yellow blanket for weeks, stitch by stitch, with all my love. Veronica unwrapped it in front of me, looked at it with that expression of contempt I already knew so well, and said, "Oh, how cute. But we only use designer clothes for the baby. You know, because of his sensitive skin." Then she put it in a drawer, and I never saw it again. Years later I found out she had thrown it in the trash that same day. Julian never defended me, not a single time. When I tried to talk to him about how I felt, about how Veronica treated me, he minimized everything. "You're being too sensitive, Mom. Veronica didn't mean that. You're misunderstanding things." He made me feel like I was crazy, like everything was in my imagination. But it was not. I knew exactly what was happening. Veronica was slowly erasing me from my son's life. The invitations to family events stopped coming. I found out through photos on social media about Leo's birthday parties, celebrations, gatherings where I had not been invited. When I asked Julian, he always had an excuse ready. "We thought you would be working. It was a last-minute thing. We forgot to tell you." Lies. All lies. Veronica was building a family where I had no place, and Julian was letting her do it. I kept working. I kept paying the loan I had taken out for Julian's education. Every month, without fail, I deposited $450 to the bank. Money that was hard to earn. Money I needed for my own expenses. But it was my debt, and I would pay it. Julian knew. He knew perfectly well that I was still paying for his university. He never offered to help me. Not a single dollar. Meanwhile, he and Veronica moved into a huge house in an exclusive neighborhood. They bought a new car every 2 years. They traveled to Europe, to the Caribbean, to places I had only seen in magazines. When Leo turned 6, Veronica finally showed her true face. It was at the boy's birthday. I had arrived early to help with the preparations, as I always did. I had baked a homemade chocolate cake, Leo's favorite. I spent the entire night before decorating it with handmade superhero figures. I was proud of that cake. It represented all my love for my grandson in every detail. Veronica saw it in the kitchen, and her face transformed into a mask of fury. "What is this?" she asked with an icy voice. "It's Leo's cake," I replied with a smile, not understanding yet. "We already ordered a professional cake for $500, she said, raising her voice. "We are not putting this homemade thing on the table." I felt as if I had been slapped. "But Leo loves homemade chocolate," I tried to explain. "Leo likes what we teach him to like," Veronica replied. "And it is not this." She took my cake, that cake into which I had put hours of work and love, and threw it directly into the trash can. She did not save it. She did not leave it for later. She destroyed it right in front of my eyes. Then she turned to me and said something I will never forget. "Eleanor, I think it's time you understand your place in this family. You are Julian's mother, yes, but I am his wife. This is my house, my son, my family. And if you want to remain a part of it, you need to learn to respect my rules." Julian had heard everything from the living room. I know because when I left the kitchen crying, I walked past him. He was sitting on the sofa, checking his phone. He saw me cry. He saw my red eyes, my trembling hands. And he said nothing. Absolutely nothing. That was the first time I truly understood that I had lost my son. The boy who swore to give me the world had turned into a stranger who would not lift a finger to defend me. Things got worse after that. Veronica started making increasingly absurd rules. I could not call Julian on his cell phone. I could only text him and wait for him to decide to reply. I could not visit their house without a formal invitation at least 2 weeks in advance. I could not bring gifts for Leo without Veronica's prior approval. I could not talk about my life, my problems, anything that might make the family uncomfortable. I was becoming a ghost in my own son's life. One day, Leo was 8 years old. I saw him leaving school. I was passing by on my way back from one of my jobs and decided to say hello. The boy ran toward me with open arms, shouting, "Grandma!" With that pure joy that only children have. He hugged me tight and asked why I did not come to visit him anymore. "I miss you so much, Grandma. Why don't you come to my house anymore?" My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. What do you tell a child? How do you explain that his mother does not want you around? From that day on, I started meeting Leo in secret. I waited outside his school once or twice a week. I brought him his favorite candy. I helped him with his homework on a park bench. I listened to his stories about his friends, his teachers, his dreams. The boy told me things he did not tell anyone else. He told me that his mom and dad were always fighting, that his dad worked all the time, that his mom spoke badly about a lot of people on the phone. Those 30 minutes we spent together became the most important part of my week. Leo wrote me letters written with that shaky, childish handwriting, full of drawings of hearts and flowers. "I love you, Grandma Eleanor. You are my favorite person in the world." I kept them all in a metal box I hid under my bed, as if they were priceless treasures, because they were. It was proof that I still mattered to someone, that I was not invisible, that my love meant something to that beautiful boy who carried my genes and my last name. But Veronica discovered our secret meetings. I do not know how, but she did. Maybe Leo mentioned something innocently, or maybe she had been watching me. One day, I received a call from Julian. His voice was pure, contained fury. "Mom, what the hell do you think you're doing seeing Leo behind our backs?" I froze. "I just wanted to spend time with my grandson," I replied with a trembling voice. "You are confusing the boy," he yelled at me. "Veronica is very upset. She says you are manipulating him, filling his head with ideas against her." I would never do that. I tried to defend myself, feeling tears beginning to form. "I would never speak ill of you in front of Leo." But Julian did not want to listen. "Starting today, you are forbidden from going near the school. If you see Leo again without our permission, we will take legal action. Do you understand? Legal action." He hung up before I could respond. I stood there, holding the phone, feeling my world crumble once again. I stopped seeing Leo. not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid. Afraid that they would actually sue me, that they would take away even that minimal contact I still had with my family. Months passed. 6 whole months without seeing my grandson, without hearing his laugh, without his hugs, without his letters. I sank into a deep depression. I stopped eating well. I lost nearly 20 pounds. My coworkers asked me if I was sick, and I was. I was sick in my soul. Julian sent me text messages occasionally. Cold messages, short, obligatory. Happy birthday, Mom. Merry Christmas. That was it. No calls, no visits, nothing. I always replied, desperate to maintain even that thin thread of communication. Thank you, my love. How is Leo? Could I visit you soon? He rarely replied. And when he did, it was always the same. We are busy. Maybe later. Last year, for Christmas, they did not even invite me. I found out through social media that they had thrown a big family dinner at their house. I saw the photos, Julian smiling next to Veronica, Leo opening expensive gifts, Veronica's parents toasting with glasses of champagne. Everyone happy, everyone together, and me, alone in my little house, eating leftover turkey that my neighbor had given me out of pity. I wept all night. I wept until I had no more tears left. I thought nothing could be worse than that. I was wrong. This year, 2 weeks before Christmas, I received a message from Julian. Mom, this year Christmas dinner will be at Cousin Betty's house. You can come if you want. It will be at 7 at night. I read that message 20 times. You can come if you want. It was not a warm invitation. It was not we miss you or we want you to come. It was almost as if it were an annoying obligation. But at least it was something. At least I could see Leo. At least I could be close to my son again. I spent 2 full weeks preparing for that dinner. I bought fabric and sewed a new beige dress because I knew Veronica would criticize my clothes. I went to the hair salon for the first time in 3 years and spent money I did not have to get my hair done. I practiced smiles in the mirror. I rehearsed conversations in my head. Stay positive, Eleanor. Don't give them reasons to criticize you. Be kind. Be invisible if necessary. You just want to be close to your family. And I decided to make lasagna. The lasagna Julian had loved all his life. I spent 2 whole days in the kitchen. I bought the freshest ingredients I could find. I made the sauce from scratch, letting it simmer for hours, adding that secret touch of seasoning that made it especially rich. I layered the pasta by hand. I used 3 different types of cheese. I baked it with care, making sure the top was perfectly golden and bubbly. It was a massive tray. A labor of love meant to feed a crowd. Christmas morning. I woke up at 5 in the morning, even though dinner was at 7 at night. I was too nervous to sleep. I got ready with care. I put on my new dress. I applied light makeup. I looked in the mirror and saw a 63-year-old woman trying desperately to look presentable for a family that had rejected her time and time again. But I had hope. I still had that stupid hope that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. I arrived at Betty's house at 4 in the afternoon. I offered to help with the preparations. Betty looked at me with pity, but she let me peel potatoes and chop vegetables. Veronica arrived at 5 with Julian and Leo. When Leo saw me, his eyes lit up. He ran toward me shouting, "Grandma!" and hugged me with such force that he almost knocked me to the ground. "I missed you so much, Grandma. So much." He buried his face in my chest, and I felt his small shoulders shaking. That boy had also suffered from our separation. Veronica pulled him away from me in a matter of seconds. "Leo, go wash your hands. They are dirty." They were not dirty. The boy had just arrived, but he obeyed, casting me an apologetic look before disappearing toward the bathroom. Veronica looked me up and down with those cold eyes. "I see you bought a new dress. What a special occasion." Sarcasm dripped from every word. "I just wanted to look nice for the family dinner," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled with that smile that did not reach her eyes. How sweet. Julian did not even say hello to me. He walked past me as if I were part of the furniture and went straight to talk to the other guests. I watched him from afar. My son, the man my baby had turned into. He was wearing an expensive dark gray suit, luxury watch on his wrist, shiny Italian shoes. He spoke with confidence, with arrogance even, about his work, his investments, his plans to buy an even bigger house. He was successful, rich, exactly what I had dreamed for him. But he had become someone I did not recognize. Dinner started at 7 o'clock sharp, 30 people around a huge table. I was seated in a corner, far from Julian, far from Leo, between two distant cousins I barely knew. Veronica had arranged the seating. Obviously, I watched as the food was served. Golden, juicy turkey, creamy mashed potatoes, fresh salads, artisan breads, everything looked beautiful. But I had brought my lasagna. I had left it in the kitchen, waiting for the perfect moment to present it. When there was a lull in the service, I decided it was my chance. I stood up with the steaming casserole dish, walked toward the main table where Julian was, and presented it to him with a trembling smile. "I made your favorite, my love. Lasagna, like when you were a kid." My voice sounded hopeful, almost pleading. The entire table went silent. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward us. Julian looked at the tray. He looked at my wrinkled hands holding it. He looked at my face full of hope. And then, with a cold and calculated gesture, he pushed the tray away with the back of his hand. "I am not going to eat this," Julian said with a flat voice, as if he were rejecting something rotten, something unworthy of being on that elegant table. The blow of his words was worse than any physical slap. I felt the tray shaking in my hands. I felt my breath stop in my throat. I felt every person at that table holding their breath, waiting for what would come next. Veronica leaned forward, her lips curling into that cruel smile I knew too well. Her eyes shone with anticipation, as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. "Oh, Julian," she said with a sugary voice, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't be so hard on your mom." But the way she said it, the condescending tone, the mocking look she threw me, made it clear she was not defending me. She was enjoying every second of my humiliation. "It's just that," she continued, turning toward the other guests as if she were sharing a secret. "We have very specific standards about what we eat. You know, for health, for quality, we can't simply eat just anything." The implication was clear. My lasagna was just anything. Inferior food. Unworthy of their table, of their status, of their perfect and expensive life. I felt the heat rising up my neck, my cheeks burning with shame. I could hear the uncomfortable silence filling the dining room. Someone coughed. A fork fell against a plate with a metallic sound that rang out like a gunshot. My cousin Claire looked at me with eyes full of pity. My Aunt Betty shook her head slowly, as if she could not believe what she was witnessing. But the worst, the absolute worst, was the expression on Julian's face. There was no shame there, no conflict, not even a glimmer of the boy who used to hug me and tell me I was his hero. There was coldness, contempt, as if he really believed I was less than him now. As if all those years of sacrifice, all those sleepless nights, all those exhausting jobs I worked so that he could have a better life, meant absolutely nothing. Then, he said it, the words that had been brewing in his mouth, fed by years of Veronica's poison, years of distancing, years of becoming someone who valued money and appearances above love. "Failed mothers do not deserve a seat at the table with us." His voice was firm, clear, without hesitation, as if he had rehearsed that line, as if he had been waiting for the perfect moment to destroy me completely. 30 people froze. Time stopped. I could not move. I could not breathe. I could not process that those words had just come out of my son's mouth. My only son. The child who had grown in my womb. The baby I had nursed. The boy I had comforted when he cried over his father's death. The teenager who had promised to give me the world. That man had just called me a failure. In front of 30 people. On Christmas. While I held a tray of food made with love. Veronica laughed. It was not a nervous giggle. It was a full, sharp laugh. Full of triumph. She covered her mouth with her hand, featuring perfectly manicured bright red nails, but her eyes pierced me with pure, malicious pleasure. She had won. After 8 years of slowly poisoning the relationship between my son and me, after isolating me, humiliating me, erasing me, she had finally gotten what she wanted. Julian choosing her, Julian rejecting me publicly, Julian becoming her perfect puppet. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, my own heart beating so hard I thought it would explode. Tears began to form in my eyes, although I fought desperately to hold them back. I was not going to cry. I would not give them that satisfaction. But my body betrayed me. My hands shook so much that the tray of lasagna began to tilt dangerously. My knees felt weak. My throat was so tight I could not swallow. Patrick, my cousin, cleared his throat uncomfortably. Julian. That was very harsh. Man, she's your mother. His voice sounded tense, annoyed, but Julian did not even look at him. He kept his eyes fixed on his empty plate, with that jaw clenched, with that stone expression he had perfected to hide any emotion. Veronica put a hand on his arm, a possessive gesture, and whispered something in his ear that made him nod. They were united. A common front against me. Claire stood up, clearly upset. This is ridiculous. Eleanor is family. How can you treat her like that? But her voice was lost in the heavy silence. No one else dared to speak. Everyone looked at their plates, their glasses, anything but me. Because witnessing my humiliation was uncomfortable. Because getting involved meant creating drama. Because it was easier to stay silent and let Veronica and Julian destroy me in peace. I just wanted to disappear. I wanted the earth to swallow me. I wanted to wake up and discover that it had all been a horrible nightmare. But it was real. Painfully real. I could feel the weight of the tray in my hands. I could smell my lasagna, that scent of home and love that now seemed to mock me. I could see the looks of pity from some guests, the uncomfortable looks from others, the triumphant look from Veronica. And then Leo moved. My 12-year-old grandson, who had been sitting next to his father in silence, pushed his chair back so violently that it scraped against the wooden floor with a sharp sound that made everyone jump. He stood up slowly, and when I looked at him, I saw that his hazel eyes were full of tears, tears that rolled freely down his cheeks. His small hands had turned into tight fists at his sides. His whole body shook with emotion. How can you say that? His voice came out broken, but strong. Stronger than I would have expected from a 12-year-old boy. How can you call Grandma a failure? Julian tensed immediately. Leo, sit down right now, he ordered, with that authoritative voice he used at work, that voice that allowed no disobedience. But Leo did not sit. For the first time in his life, he defied his father openly. I'm not going to sit. I'm not going to stay quiet while you treat Grandma like this. Veronica stopped smiling. Her face transformed into a mask of fury. Don't talk to your father like that, she hissed with a venomous voice. I am going to ground you for disrespecting us this way. But Leo ignored her completely. He took a step toward me, then another, until he was standing by my side. He took my free hand, the one not holding the tray, and squeezed it hard. His hand was small, soft, but surprisingly firm. Grandma Eleanor is the best person I know, Leo said with a trembling but clear voice, looking directly at his father. She helps me with my homework when you guys are too busy. She listens to me when you guys don't have time. She loves me for real. Not just when it's convenient. Every word was like a bomb falling in that silent dining room. Guests exchanged surprised looks. Julian had gone stiff as a statue. We saw each other in secret, Leo continued, and my heart stopped. After school, at the park, she brought me candy and helped me with math. She told me stories about when Dad was a kid. She made me feel important. The tears kept rolling down his face, but he did not try to wipe them. And she never spoke badly about you guys, even though you talk bad about her all the time. Julian stood up so fast his chair almost fell over. His face was red with rage. What did you say? His voice was dangerously low. Veronica stood up too, her eyes like slits. I told you that woman was manipulating you, she told Julian with a shrill voice. I told you she was toxic. And now look. The kid admits it himself. She was seeing him in secret, poisoning him against us. She didn't poison me, Leo shouted, his voice breaking. You guys are the ones who are wrong. You are the ones who fight all the time. You are the ones who never have time for me. The silence that followed was absolute. He had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Grandma loves me for real, Leo continued, his volume rising with every word. She sacrificed everything for you, Dad. Everything. And you treat her like she's trash. The tears kept running down his cheeks. But there was something else besides pain in his expression now. There was anger. There was disappointment. There was a maturity that should not exist in a 12-year-old boy. She told me how you worked 3 jobs to pay for college, how she is still paying the loan she took out for you, how you have never paid her back a single dollar. The entire dining room ran out of air, 30 people processing that information. Julian went pale. Veronica looked at him with wide eyes. "What loan?" she asked with a sharp voice. "What is this kid talking about?" But Julian did not answer. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For the first time all night, he seemed unsure, exposed, vulnerable, because it was true. It was all true, and now the whole family knew. "Is that true, Julian?" Aunt Betty asked with a trembling voice. "Eleanor is still paying for your college?" The silence from Julian was answer enough. Claire let out a stifled gasp. "My God, you have a huge salary, and your mother is still working as a cleaner paying your debts." Her voice was full of disgust. Patrick shook his head slowly, looking at Julian as if he were a stranger. "That is low, brother. Very low." "Leo, shut up," Julian ordered finally, his voice shaking with rage and panic. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're a child. You don't understand how things work between adults." But Leo shook his head violently. "I understand perfectly. I understand that you treated the person who loved you most in this world badly. I understand that you are ashamed of her because she isn't rich like you guys. I understand that you are a bad son." The last 3 words fell like stones into still water. Julian stood completely motionless, as if he had been slapped. Veronica let out a gasped breath. Some of the guests murmured amongst themselves, clearly uncomfortable, but also clearly on Leo's side. Claire nodded with approval. Patrick looked at Julian with evident disgust. Betty had tears in her eyes as she watched me still holding that damn lasagna tray. "If Grandma Eleanor has to leave," Leo said with a firm voice, squeezing my hand even tighter, "then I'm leaving too. I'm not staying here watching you humiliate her. I'm not going to be like you, Dad. I'm not going to forget the people who really love me just because it's convenient." And without waiting for an answer, he started pulling me toward the door. My legs moved automatically, following him, although my brain was still trying to process everything that had just happened. "Leo, I order you to sit down right now," Julian shouted, his voice full of desperate authority. But Leo did not stop. He kept walking, pulling me by the hand, his small shoulders squared with determination. "If you walk out that door, there will be consequences," Veronica threatened, her voice hysterical now. "I'm going to ground you for a month, 2 months. No phone, no video games, nothing." Leo stopped at the door and turned to look at his parents. His cheeks were still wet from tears, but his eyes held a clarity, a certainty that broke my heart. "I don't care," he said with a calm voice. "Punish me all you want. It's worth it to be on the right side." Then he looked at me, smiled with that sad but genuine smile, and said, "Let's go, Grandma. You don't have to be where you aren't valued." We walked out together into the cold December night. The freezing air hit my face, and finally, I let the tears flow freely. I cried while we walked down the street, still holding the tray of lasagna with one hand and Leo's hand with the other. I cried for the humiliation. I cried for the loss of my son. I cried for the injustice of it all. But I also cried with gratitude for this brave boy who had defended my dignity when no one else did. The park was decorated with Christmas lights blinking in gold and silver tones. There were families walking, children running, couples holding hands. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone but us. We sat on a remote bench under a large tree that partially protected us from the biting wind. Leo was still hugging me, his head resting on my shoulder, his small body shivering from the cold and the emotions. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he whispered. "I'm sorry Dad is like that. I'm sorry Mom is so mean to you. It's not fair." I kissed his head, inhaling that scent of child shampoo mixed with cookies he always had. "You don't have to apologize for them, my love. You are perfect. You are exactly what I needed right now." I rubbed his back gently, trying to give him warmth, trying to comfort him even though I myself was shattered inside. We shared the lasagna right there, on that cold bench, under the Christmas lights decorating the park. Leo said it was the best lasagna he had ever tasted in his life. "Much better than all that expensive food at dinner," he said with his mouth full, and we both laughed through our tears. It was the sweetest and most bitter moment of my life. Sweet because of my grandson's company. Bitter because I knew this would have terrible consequences. He told me things that night that broke my soul. He told me that Veronica constantly spoke ill of me when Julian wasn't home, that she told him I was a bitter old woman who only wanted to ruin their happy family, that my poverty was contagious and dangerous, that I hadn't known how to raise Julian well, and that's why she had to remake him when she met him. But I never believed her, Grandma, Leo said fiercely. I know who you really are. I remember all the times you helped me, all the afternoons in the park, all the stories you told me. I kept all your letters in a box under my bed, he continued with a broken voice. Mom doesn't know I have them. I read them when I feel lonely, when they fight, when I need to remember that someone in this world really loves me without conditions. His words made me cry even more. This child shouldn't be carrying so much emotional weight. He shouldn't have to choose between his parents and his grandmother. But Veronica had created this situation. She had forced this choice. He also confessed that his parents fought constantly, that Julian came home late almost every night, using work as an excuse not to be there. That Veronica spent her time buying expensive things, designer clothes, jewelry, furniture, all to fill a void that money could never fill. They have all the money in the world, but they aren't happy. Grandma, not like when I'm with you. With them, everything is appearances. Everything is, what will people say? Nothing is real. He told me they had enrolled him in extracurricular activities he wasn't interested in just because they were prestigious. French classes, golf, piano, all to create the image of the perfect son of a successful family. They don't ask me what I want to do, he said sadly. They just tell me what I have to do to fit into their world. My heart broke with every word. Julian had become exactly what I had tried to avoid, a man who valued status over happiness. 2 hours later, Julian arrived at the park in his expensive car, a shiny black sedan that probably cost more than I would earn in 5 years. He got out with furious steps, his face a mask of contained rage. Leo, in the car. Now, his voice allowed no argument. Leo looked at me with pleading eyes, clinging to my arm. I don't want to go, Grandma. Please. But I nodded gently, with a shattered heart. Go with your dad, my love. I'll be fine. I didn't want the boy to suffer more because of me. I didn't want this to escalate even further. He stood up slowly, gave me one last crushing hug, and whispered in my ear, I love you, Grandma. Never forget it. No matter what happens, never forget it. Julian didn't look at me. He didn't say a word. He grabbed Leo by the arm with more force than necessary, shoved him into the car, almost pushing him, and they left, leaving me alone in that dark and cold park. I sat there for hours, watching the Christmas lights blink, listening to distant laughter of happy families, feeling the deepest emptiness I had ever felt in my life. My son hated me. My daughter-in-law had turned me into her enemy. And now, probably, I would never see Leo again. The December cold soaked into my bones, but the cold in my heart was even worse. I felt completely alone in the world. 63 years of life, and I had nothing. No family, no money, no hope. Finally, I got up from that bench when the park was almost empty. My legs barely held me up. I walked back to my little house with slow and heavy steps, like a defeated woman. The house was dark and cold when I entered. There was no one waiting for me. There were no warm lights or comforting hugs, just silence and loneliness. I let myself fall onto my old bed without even taking off the beige dress, and I cried until I fell asleep from pure exhaustion. The next day, I woke up after barely 3 hours of sleep. My eyes were so swollen I could barely open them. My head throbbed with intense pain. My entire body hurt as if I had been beaten. I looked in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. I seemed to have aged 10 years in a single night. I had deep purple circles under my eyes. My skin looked grayish. My hair was completely disheveled. I looked exactly how I felt, destroyed. But I had to get up. I had to go to work. Life didn't stop just because your heart was broken. I still had to pay Julian's university loan. I still had to pay rent, food, utilities. Poverty doesn't allow you the luxury of falling apart. I made myself a watery coffee with the last grounds I had left. I wasn't hungry. The idea of eating turned my stomach. I put on my cleaning uniform. That uniform Veronica despised so much, and was about to leave when my phone rang. It was Julian. My heart gave a violent jump in my chest. Maybe he was calling to apologize. Maybe he had reflected during the night. Maybe he had realized how horrible he had been. Maybe something of that boy I had raised, that sweet and loving boy, still existed inside that cold man. I answered with trembling hands, with a thread of hope clinging desperately to my broken heart. "Hello." My voice came out hoarse, broken. "Mom," he said, and his tone froze my blood instantly. There was no regret there, no guilt, not a trace of the tenderness that had once existed between us. There was triumph. There was calculated cruelty. There was something dark and twisted that made me feel nauseous. "I need you to know something." He paused dramatically, as if he wanted to savor the moment, as if he wanted to ensure every word penetrated deeply into my wounded soul. "I just received my year-end bonus. $50,000, on top of my base salary of $180,000 a year. Veronica and I are buying $1 million house in the most exclusive part of the city. A house with 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, a pool, a huge garden, a 3-car garage." Every word was like a knife slowly digging into my chest. "I wanted you to know. I wanted you to understand that I was right to distance myself from your life." My breathing stopped. My legs became weak. I had to sit on the edge of my bed before I fell. "Julian," I whispered with a trembling voice, "how can you tell me this?" He laughed. He laughed with that cold, hollow laugh he had learned from Veronica. That laugh that had no joy, only pure poison. "Easy, because it's the truth. You sacrificed everything for me. Yes, but that was your choice. I never asked you to ruin your life for mine. Now I am where I am, because of my own effort, not yours." He continued with a hard, emotionless voice. "And frankly, Mom, having a poor mother who cleans other people's houses doesn't fit the image Veronica and I are building. We have a reputation to maintain. Important friends, business partners. I can't introduce you in my social circles. It would be embarrassing." Every word was a stab. Every syllable ripped a piece of my soul. "So you called just to brag," I said with a broken voice, feeling the tears start to roll down my cheeks again. "Just to rub your success in my face, while I keep paying the debts I took out to give it to you." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. For a second I thought maybe I had touched his conscience, but I was wrong. "About that," he said with a casual tone. "Too casual. I think it's time you stop using that loan as an excuse to make me feel guilty." "Excuse?" My voice went up an octave. "Excuse? Julian, I still owe $42,000 of the $65,000 I spent on your education. $450 a month that I pay religiously, even though I barely have enough to eat. How dare you call it an excuse?" He sighed with annoyance, as if I were a stupid child who didn't understand how the world worked. "That was your mistake, Mom. Your mistake for wanting to live above your means. No one forced you to go into debt. You are my son," I screamed, completely losing my composure. "I did it because I loved you, because I wanted you to have opportunities, because I dreamed of you having a better life than mine." My voice broke into sobs. "And you got it. You have everything I dreamed for you. But you became someone horrible in the process. You became someone I don't recognize. I became someone successful," he corrected me coldly. "Something you never were and never will be. And you know what? Mom, Veronica is right." She opened my eyes. She made me see that your poverty, your victim mentality, your conformism, all of that was toxic. It was dragging me down. I had to cut you out of my life so I could grow. His words were pure poison, each one designed to destroy me a little more. "So this is what Veronica has done to you," I said with a trembling but firmer voice now. "She turned you into her clone, into someone cruel, superficial, who only values money and appearances. The boy I raised would never have said these things." Julian laughed again, that horrible laugh that froze my blood. "The boy you raised was weak, sentimental, too attached to you. Veronica helped me be strong, to set boundaries, to understand that family is not an obligation if that family contributes nothing to your life." "I contribute nothing," I repeated quietly, feeling something inside me break definitively. "I gave you life. I raised you alone since you were 5. I worked until I bled so you could have an education. I sacrificed my health, my youth, my dreams, everything, for you, and to you, that is nothing. My voice was no longer trembling. It had passed from pain to something colder, something more dangerous. Absolute disappointment. Correct, he said without hesitation. It is nothing because it was your obligation as a mother. I didn't ask to be born. You decided to have me. I didn't ask you to work 3 jobs. You decided to go into debt. Those were all your decisions, not mine. So stop acting like I owe you something. The silence that followed was dense, heavy, charged with years of wasted love, of sacrifices never valued, of a maternal bond shattered irreparably. Fine, I said finally with a strangely calm voice. I understand perfectly. I no longer owe you anything as a mother, because I never owed you anything according to you. But let me tell you something, Julian. Someday, when you are 63 and look back, you are going to understand what you destroyed today. You are going to understand that money and big houses do not fill the void you leave when you betray the one who loved you unconditionally. And when that day comes, when you finally understand, it is going to be too late. How dramatic, he replied with a mocking tone. You were always like that, exaggerating everything, playing the victim. That's why Leo is confused too. You manipulated him yesterday with your performance. But don't worry, Veronica and I already put him in his place last night. He is grounded for a month. No electronics, no going out. He is going to learn to respect his parents and not let himself be manipulated by sentimental old women. My heart contracted with pain thinking of Leo. They punished him for defending me? For having empathy and decency? My voice shook with indignation. That boy has more dignity and moral value in his little finger than you two put together, Julian snorted. That boy needs to learn his place, and his place is not with you. In fact, Veronica and I have decided that you will no longer have contact with Leo. None. No calls, no messages, no chance meetings. If we see you near his school, we will call the police. You can't do that, I whispered, feeling panic beginning to take over. He is my grandson. I have a right to see him. Julian laughed cruelly. Technically, yes. You can see him, but only if I allow it, and I don't allow it. That's how things work. Mom, parents have the final say, and we decided that you are not a positive influence for our son. So stay away from our family. Stay away from my life. Keep paying your loan like the good martyr you are, and leave us alone. He hung up before I could answer. The dial tone resonated in my ear like a final scream of goodbye. I sat there, holding the phone with trembling hands, looking at the empty wall of my room, feeling my world collapse completely. It wasn't just the rejection. It wasn't just the cruelty. It was the absolute certainty that I had lost my son forever. The Julian I knew, the boy I had raised with so much love, had died. And in his place remained this cruel stranger who measured people's worth by the size of their bank accounts. That week was the darkest of my life. I stopped eating almost completely. I lost 8 pounds in 5 days. I went to work like a zombie, cleaning floors and bathrooms on autopilot, while my mind repeated Julian's words over and over again. You contribute nothing. It was your obligation. You are embarrassing. The words spun in my head like a broken record, destroying every happy memory, staining every sacrifice I had made with love. My coworkers noticed my state. Iris, a woman who had been cleaning with me for 15 years, found me crying in an office bathroom the 3rd day after Christmas. Eleanor, what's wrong? I've never seen you like this. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head while the tears kept falling. She hugged me tight, without asking questions, simply holding me while I crumbled in her arms. A man or a child, she said finally. Those are the only 2 things that break a woman like that. I nodded weakly. Son, I whispered. I forced myself to keep going. I had no choice. On December 28th, I had to make my monthly loan payment, $450 that I transferred with trembling fingers, watching my bank account go almost to zero. I still owed $42,000. $42,000 that I would keep paying for years while Julian lived in his $1 million mansion. The irony was so bitter, it almost made me laugh. Almost 3 days after New Year's, When I was cleaning an office downtown, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering. Lately, I only received bad news, but something made me answer. Hello. My voice sounded tired, dull. Eleanor? This is Margaret. I froze. Margaret, my older sister. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 2 years. Margaret and I had had completely different lives. She had married young to a successful businessman and moved to another state. When her husband died 15 years ago, he left her a considerable fortune. Margaret had invested wisely and now was a partial owner of several companies. We were sisters, yes, but worlds apart. She lived in a reality of luxury and success. I lived day to day, counting pennies. Margaret, I replied, surprised. How are you? There was a brief pause. I was at the Christmas dinner at Betty's house. I saw everything that happened. My heart stopped. Margaret had been there, among the 30 people. I hadn't seen her. I hadn't noticed her presence. Why didn't you say anything? I asked with a weak voice. Because I needed to see the full situation before acting. I needed to understand exactly who Julian and Veronica really were. And now you know, I said bitterly. Now you know my son hates me. Margaret sighed. Your son is an idiot manipulated by an ambitious and shallow woman. But that is about to change. Little sister, I need you to come to my house. We have a lot to talk about. Something in her voice made me feel a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Small, fragile, but there. When? I asked. Today. Now. I'm sending a car for you in an hour. The car that arrived was a silver sedan with a uniformed driver. I felt ridiculous getting into that elegant vehicle with my cleaning uniform and my worn-out bag. The driver treated me with absolute respect, as if I were someone important. The trip lasted 40 minutes to a residential area I had only seen in magazines. Huge houses, perfectly manicured lawns, clean streets lined with trees. The car stopped in front of an impressive property with wrought iron gates. Margaret was waiting for me at the door. At 70 years old, she looked elegant and powerful. Silver hair, perfectly styled, expensive but sober clothes, straight posture. She hugged me tight as soon as I got out of the car. Sister, she said with an emotional voice. It's been so long. I clung to her, feeling tears threatening to come out again. She took me inside her house. It was everything I had imagined. Fine furniture, art on the walls, marble floors that shone. We sat in her spacious living room, and she asked for tea to be brought to us. Let me get straight to the point, Margaret said after the housekeeper served us and withdrew. I have investigated Julian and Veronica during this last week. I have friends in key places, lawyers, well-connected people. She leaned forward, her eyes shining with determination. And I discovered very interesting things. My heart began to beat faster. What things? First, Julian works at Cortazar Enterprises. Did you know I own 40% of those shares? My mouth fell open in surprise. What? She nodded. I invested 10 years ago when the company was in trouble. I am a silent partner. Julian has no idea. He has never seen me in board meetings because I send my legal representative. I process that information slowly. So you are practically his boss. Technically, yes. And second, Margaret continued, I spoke to my lawyer about the situation with Leo. It turns out grandparents have legal rights in this state. We can sue for visitation rights, especially considering there is evidence that the child wants to see you and that the parents are using him as a weapon against you. That is called parental alienation. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. But there is more, Margaret said, taking out her phone. I recorded the entire Christmas dinner. Everything, from the moment Julian rejected your lasagna to when Leo walked out with you. I have video evidence of the public humiliation, of Veronica's behavior, of everything. She showed me snippets of the video on her phone. It was hard to see it again, to see my face of pain, to see Veronica's cruel laugh, to see Julian looking at me with contempt. But Margaret was right. It was powerful evidence. Why are you doing this? I asked with a trembling voice. We haven't spoken in 2 years. Margaret took my hand in hers. Because you are my sister, and because when I saw how they treated you, when I saw that brave boy defending you while my nephew destroyed you, I realized I had been absent too long. I had been so busy with my businesses, with my life, that I forgot family is the most important thing. Besides, she continued with a small smile, I always knew Julian had turned out to be an idiot. I saw it coming years ago when he met that viper Veronica, but I needed them to show their true colors publicly before I could act. She leaned back in her armchair, crossing her legs elegantly. Now listen to me carefully, Eleanor, because this is what is going to happen. First, I am going to fire Julian from Cortazar Enterprises, not immediately, because that would be too obvious, but in 2 weeks, during the January performance review, his contract will not be renewed. For completely legal and justifiable reasons, his position is being eliminated due to corporate restructuring. That means he is left without his salary of $180,000 a year, without his bonus, without anything. My mouth was open in shock. You can do that. Margaret smiled. I can and I will. I already spoke to the CEO. He agrees. Julian is not as indispensable as he thinks. Second, my lawyer Henry is going to start a legal process to guarantee your visitation rights with Leo. It is going to be a solid case. We have the video, we have witnesses willing to testify, and we have the boy himself who clearly wants to be with you. But that is not all. Margaret continued with a softer voice now. Eleanor, I don't have children. I never did. My husband and I tried for years, but it didn't work. When he died, I dedicated myself completely to business. I built an empire, yes, but I am alone. I am 70 years old, and I am alone. Her eyes moistened slightly. I have been thinking a lot about my legacy, about what will happen to everything I have built when I am no longer here. I already updated my will, she said, looking me directly in the eyes. 50% of everything I have goes to you. Properties, investments, bank accounts, everything. We are talking about approximately $8 million. Eleanor, when I die, which I hope won't be soon, she added with a smile, you are going to be a very wealthy woman. But I don't want to wait until I die to help you. She stood up and gestured for me to follow her. She took me to a room that functioned as an office. She opened a drawer in her desk and took out several documents. I have an apartment downtown, 2 bedrooms, fully furnished, in a secure building. It is empty now. It is yours, if you want it. No rent. It is mine, so you don't have to pay anyone. My hands shook as I looked at the papers she extended to me. Margaret, I can't accept all this. Yes, you can, she said firmly, and you will, because you deserve it. Because you worked like a slave for 38 years to raise an ungrateful son. Because you are still paying his debts while he lives like a king. Because you are my sister, and I should have done this years ago. She approached and put her hands on my shoulders. Besides, I need help with some of my businesses. I have properties that need supervision. Small administrative tasks. Nothing too complicated, but I need someone trustworthy. I will pay you $3,000 a month. It is real work, not charity. $3,000 a month, more than I earned in my 3 current jobs combined. Tears began to roll down my cheeks uncontrollably. I don't know what to say. Margaret hugged me tight. Say yes. Say you are going to stop sacrificing yourself for people who don't value you. Say you are going to live the rest of your life with dignity and comfort. I nodded against her shoulder, sobbing. Yes, yes to everything. The following days were a whirlwind. Margaret moved her contacts with military efficiency. Her lawyer, Henry, came to see me at the apartment where I now lived. A beautiful space with large windows that let in natural light, comfortable cream-colored furniture, a modern kitchen that looked like it was taken from a magazine. Henry was a man of about 55, serious but kind, with years of experience in family law. Mrs. Eleanor, your case is solid, he explained as we reviewed documents at my new dining table. We have video evidence of public humiliation. We have Leo clearly expressing his desire to see you. We have witnesses willing to testify about Julian and Veronica's behavior. And most importantly, we have proof that Julian benefited financially from you for years without ever contributing to the payment of the debt you acquired for him. Henry prepared a formal lawsuit requesting guaranteed visitation rights, 1 weekend a month minimum, weekly video calls. Additionally, he included a request that Julian begin paying his proportional share of the university loan, I had taken out for him. "This is going to hurt," Henry warned. "Julian is going to fight. Veronica is going to create a circus. But we have everything on our side: the law, the evidence, and the truth." 2 weeks after New Year's, just as Margaret had promised, Julian was fired. I found out because Claire called me excitedly. "Eleanor, you aren't going to believe this. Julian lost his job. He says it was an unexpected restructuring, that it makes no sense, that his bosses are crazy. He is furious. Veronica is hysterical." I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because he finally faced consequences. Sadness because he was my son. And a part of me still loved him, despite everything. The news of the lawsuit arrived 3 days later. Henry called me. "The papers were served this morning. Julian and Veronica already have them." That afternoon, my phone exploded. First, it was a text message from Julian. "Are you suing me? Are you insane? I am going to destroy you in court." Then calls I didn't answer. Then voice messages full of rage. "This is what I get for giving you years of my life, for putting up with your victimhood. Now you sue me as if I were the bad guy here." Veronica also left messages. Her voice was pure hysteria. "You are a toxic grandmother, a manipulator. We are going to prove to the judge that you are a danger to Leo. We are going to get a restraining order. Never, never are you going to see that boy again." But I was no longer afraid. I had Margaret. I had Henry. I had evidence. I had the truth on my side. And for the first time in years, I had hope. Then Veronica did exactly what Margaret had predicted. She mounted a public campaign on social media. She posted a long post accusing me of being a manipulative grandmother trying to destroy her family. She said I had poisoned Leo against his parents, that I was mentally unstable, that they had tried to include me in their lives, but I was too toxic. The post went viral among her friends and acquaintances. Hundreds of comments supporting her. "How awful. Protect your family. Toxic mothers-in-law are the worst." But Claire responded. She published her own post telling the truth. "I was at that Christmas dinner. I saw everything. Julian publicly humiliated his mother, a woman who sacrificed everything for him. He called her a failure in front of 30 people. Veronica laughed. The only one with dignity was Leo, a 12-year-old boy who defended his grandmother while the adults behaved like monsters. Patrick also commented, supporting Claire. Betty did the same. Veronica's narrative began to crumble. 3 weeks later, we had our first court hearing. Julian and Veronica arrived with an expensive lawyer, designer suits, all the confidence in the world. Julian looked at me with pure hate when I entered the courtroom. Veronica smiled at me with that fake and poisonous smile. But when Henry presented the evidence, when the judge saw the video of the Christmas dinner, when she heard the testimonies of Claire, Patrick, and Betty, Julian's expression changed. He went pale, nervous. For the first time, he understood he had no control over the situation. The judge, a woman of about 60 with a serious expression, watched the entire video without interruptions. I saw how her frown deepened more and more. When it finished, she looked at Julian with evident disgust. "Sir, you called your mother a failure in front of your 12-year-old son. Do you have anything to say about that?" Julian stammered. It was a moment of tension. The words came out without thinking. The judge shook her head. "Words always have intention, sir, especially words so specific and cruel." Then they called Leo. My grandson entered the judge's chambers accompanied by a social worker. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he took a step toward me before remembering where he was. The judge asked him gentle questions. "Leo, do you want to see your grandmother?" His answer was immediate. "Yes, very much. I miss her every day." "Did your parents tell you that you couldn't see her?" "Yes. Mom says Grandma is toxic, but it's not true. Grandma just loves me." "Did your grandmother ever speak badly about your parents?" asked the judge. Leo shook his head vigorously. "Never. Not once. Even though they talk bad about her all the time." Julian sank into his chair. Veronica stared at the table, her face red with shame and contained rage. The judge listened to everything, took notes, and finally gave her temporary verdict while the full case was prepared. Mrs. Eleanor is granted guaranteed visitation rights, 1 full weekend a month, video calls twice a week, Julian and Veronica are prohibited from speaking negatively about the grandmother in front of the child. Any violation of this order will result in more severe consequences, including possible loss of custody. The bang of the gavel resonated in the room. Julian stood up furious, but his lawyer pulled him by the arm to sit down. Additionally, the judge ordered that Julian begin paying $500 monthly toward the university loan I had taken out. You benefited directly from that money, sir. It is fair that you contribute to paying it. Julian was livid. Veronica was crying, not from sadness but from powerless rage. They had lost. Completely. 6 months have passed since that day in court. 6 months that have transformed my life completely. Now I live in that beautiful apartment Margaret gave me. I work for her, supervising some of her properties. A dignified job that pays me well and allows me to live with comfort. I no longer clean other people's floors. I no longer work 3 jobs, killing myself with exhaustion. For the first time in my life, I have savings in the bank. I see Leo every weekend of the month. He comes to stay with me, and we cook together. We watch movies. We talk about everything. He tells me about school, his friends, his dreams. The relationship between him and his parents is tense. Julian barely speaks to him. Veronica treats him coldly. But Leo is strong. Stronger than I was at his age. I don't care, Grandma, he tells me. I prefer your genuine love to their conditional love. Julian never found another job that paid like the previous one. Now he works at a small company earning $60,000 a year. They had to sell the house they were going to buy. They couldn't qualify for the loan without his previous salary. Now they rent a modest apartment. Nothing luxurious. Nothing to brag about on social media. Veronica stopped posting her perfect photos. Her world of appearances collapsed. And the most ironic thing of all is that Julian finally asked for my forgiveness. 2 months ago, he called me crying. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I lost everything. I lost my job, my house, my dignity. Veronica threatens to divorce me if our economic situation doesn't improve. I don't know what to do. I listened in silence. Part of me wanted to comfort him. Part of me wanted to tell him everything would be okay. But the stronger part, the part that had learned to value herself, knew she couldn't. Julian, I said with a calm voice, I forgave you a long time ago, because holding a grudge only hurts me, but forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean we go back to having the relationship we had. That relationship died on Christmas night when you called me a failure. He sobbed on the other end of the line. I know. I was horrible. I was a monster. If you want to rebuild something, I continued, it is going to have to be from scratch, with respect, with humility, and with therapy. Julian, you need therapy to understand why you became someone capable of treating the one who loved you unconditionally like that. He accepted. He started therapy last month. He still pays me the $500 monthly, as the judge ordered. He still struggles with his new reality. But at least he is getting treatment. Margaret and I are now inseparable. We travel together. We work together. We laugh together. She took me to Europe last month. I, who had never left the country, walked through Paris, through Rome, through Barcelona. I saw things I had only dreamed of. I ate in elegant restaurants. I bought myself nice clothes. I lived. I really lived for the first time in decades. Today is my 64th birthday. Margaret organized a dinner at her house. Claire, Patrick, Betty, Henry, and some new friends I have made all came. And Leo came, of course. My beautiful grandson gave me a photo album he made himself with all our moments together these 6 months. So you never forget that you are loved. Grandma, says the dedication. As I blew out the candles on my cake, surrounded by people who genuinely appreciate me, I thought about everything that had happened, about the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, but I also thought about justice, about recovered dignity, about true love, and I understood something fundamental. Sometimes you have to lose everything to gain what really matters. Sometimes the people who call you a failure are the ones who are most lost. And sometimes, just sometimes, happy endings do exist. So, have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to save yourself? Have you had to choose your dignity over a toxic relationship? Let me know in the comments.